Hello and welcome to Scotty Kilmer Car Talk Live Podcast, where I use my 51 years experience of fixing cars to answer all your car questions. Notice you don't see advertisements flying all over the place. I'm not sponsored by anything but the truth. I'm here to help everyone around the world with their car problems. Just ask your questions on the live chat. I pick the best ones and answer them. First question is Archer Abshire, and Archer says, is it safe to drive with a bent frame? Pretty good question. Of course, it depends on how bent is the frame. I actually had a customer years ago. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. He had a big Toyota 4Runner. It was white. It looked like an iceberg. And he had it T-boned. And the entire vehicle was bent in. And he got like 80 pounds of Bondo. Not kidding. And he covered up the big cracking parts. But you could still tell the whole thing was almost bent in half. But it wasn't bent enough to make the wheels track wrong. So it still went straight down the road, even though you were driving this 4Runner that looked like somebody bent it in half. The tires were still going straight. So if you find it still tracks good down the road and the frame doesn't have a thing where it's actually cracking in half and you can see it's going to split wide open, but most vehicles these days have unibodies anyway, so the whole vehicle is basically the frame. If the tires still track good forwards, you can often drive them a long time. Like I said, that guy was still driving that thing 5 years later. It was, and if somebody still has it, we can put the hard top on in the winter because the soft tops are kind of crappy when it's snow and ice and stuff. Next question. Tyler Dennison says, I got a 2011 Ford Ranger 4.0 4x4 5-speed manual. Do you think it's a reliable truck? Yeah, it can be a very reliable truck if you take care of it, because it's a manual transmission. The weakest thing is in those Explorers with the automatic transmissions. The customers of mine that had problems over the years, they had problems with the automatic transmission breaking down, and it cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to repair them. So basically, you want to make sure that you don't overheat the engine. Change the oil regularly. You do that, they can last a really long time with the standard transmission. It's kind of rare to find the standards with them, though. Most of them are automatics, the ones that I see. Next question. Some guy says, Scotty, how dangerous is it to fart in a smart car? Well, it depends. They're so small, usually there's only one person in it, so you don't care. They always say a man doesn't mind the smell of his own fart, so you're not really going to care. But if there's somebody else in the car with you, they're not going to like it because they're very, very tiny inside. And you might want to watch my video, why it's dumb to buy a smart car. In the United States, it's kind of a dumb thing to do. In Europe, where they have tiny little parking spaces and they don't drive that much, they're okay. And they sold a few of them there. But I mean, the last year that they sold smart cars in the United States, I think they sold like 1,600 of them. Nobody wants to buy them here anymore. They're just too small. I drove around in one once when I was working on it. And I took it on the highway because he was having a shaking problem at highway speeds. Boy, when those big 18-wheelers went by, it scared the heck out of me. I wouldn't want to drive one of those things around on the highway, I'll tell you that. Next question. Claret 206 says, I got an '03 Lexus ES 300. When I use heating or cooling, the flaps adjusting cold and hot get confused and make noise. This is a faulty temperature sensor. How can I fix it? Okay. If they make a little bit of noise and it stops, live with it. Because that's a 16-year-old Lexus. They're well-built cars. There's no arguing that. They're really well made. But the main problem is, as they age, they can be very complex to fix when stuff like that breaks. The only way anybody can even work on that thing, they have to have a dealer level scan tool to analyze the HVAC system. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's all tied in together and it's all run by computer. So if you get a little wacky noises, but then they go away, my advice, live with it. And I found in my own customers' cars with those, a lot of times if you have it on a low speed, low blower speed, low speed, you'll hear noises. But if you put it on a higher speed, you won't. So just run the fan faster. And a lot of times you won't hear the noise anymore. That's what I do with my wife's. Well, we got a 2002 ES300 and it worked perfectly fine. But if you have it in that low fan speeding, a lot of times you'll hear little noises. Just turn it up higher so you don't hear them. Next question. D2 to Air says, I got a 2011 Pathfinder. It won't start when the temperature gets cold. Cranks like crazy, but it won't fire. Hook up a jumper, it starts right up. Any insight in this? Okay. First, just replace the battery. As nutty as it sounds, once in a while, a weak battery will do exactly that. It will crank the engine, but it won't start it. Now, that's not a common problem, but I've seen that 6 or 7 times in my life for working on cars for 51 years. I'd had customers that the engine would crank, but it wouldn't start. And when I jumped it, it started right up. Modern cars need a lot of power to run the ignition system, the fuel system, the anti-theft system, and to crank the engine. And if you're just jumping it, it starts right up. First thing I'd say, just replace your battery. 99% of the time, that'll fix it. Now, if it's not that, then you got a wiring problem. That something's wrong with your battery terminals feeding power out, and it's not getting right. And when you put clamps on the top of them, the power feeds. Then you need new battery terminals to fix it. But most of the time, it's actually just a bad battery. Next question. Jesus Feather says, Scotty, I'm looking to rebuild the IS6 4.0 transmission, my Jeep Cherokee. I want to replace the all-wheel 4 with a manual. What do you recommend in Denver, Colorado? To send the block to be bored and buy a remanufactured transmission? Okay. Yeah, if you can get a remanufactured transmission, I'd do that. But the block, I don't advise really trying to have one guy bore the block out, somebody else. You're better off to buy a totally remanufactured engine. That's just the way that it goes. Now, that is a Jeep. They're very popular, and a lot of guys like souping them up for off-road. There's a zillion places out there that you can buy really quality remanufactured engine. I would just go out and have them do the whole thing and then install it, because you don't want to mix. Over the years, I've seen more people have serious problems with their vehicles because, oh, well, one guy did the block, another guy did the head, another guy put it together, and each one is trying to blame the other if there's a problem. You want to get a quality remanufactured engine if you want to do it right. The whole thing. Don't do one here or one there. Next question. Michael Blackwell says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a Honda Element for $5,000 with 150,000 miles on it. Should I get the automatic or the stick? Okay. You definitely want the stick. The automatics and those things are kind of weak. The sticks, those things are screamers. I've got customers with Elements with 5-speed standard transmissions. They'll burn rubber in all 4 gears. Those things are zippy. They don't weigh all that much. And with a standard transmission, it's much more fun to drive. You get better gas mileage, and it will not break like the Honda automatic transmission. Honda, of course, started out as a motorcycle company. They're all standard transmission, other than a 750 Honda they made once with an automatic that was a piece of junk they couldn't sell. Nobody wanted to buy it. They were terrible. So their standard transmissions are bulletproof. Buy the standard. Don't buy the automatic. And those things can really zip around. But if it's got 150,000 miles on it, I try to pay a little bit less than $5,000 for it. That's a lot of money for that kind of mileage, really. Next question. Jose Alombre says, good morning, Mr. Kilmer. I was wondering about the Chevy SSR. Were they decent trucks? No. I hope you haven't bought one already. I had customers who bought them. They had nothing but headaches. Some of them tried suing GM under the lemon law to get their money back. One of them actually did, but the other ones, they didn't win when they had their case with the negotiator, because a lot of times the negotiators are actually picked by GM. So guess who they're going to side with, you know? Not that honest of a process anymore. Originally it was, but it isn't anymore. The quality of those things, they just don't have the quality. I mean, they just don't. Uh, but if you have it, take care of it, because, you know, you try selling it, they have no resale value. They're not worth anything. So, like, guy the other day came with one to me and said, "Oh, what should I do, Scotty?" And I said, "Look, you're going to get nothing for it if you sell it, and it's working okay now. Just let me maintain it for you. And if something major's going on, I'll tell you, get rid of it now, or just keep driving it until the wheels fall off, it doesn't work at all, and then junk the thing." You don't put a lot of money in it, but if you got one, take care of it. You never know how long something's going to last. And if it's paid for, what the heck? Just keep driving it. If you're not going to get anything for it used, that's my theory with any kind of car. You're not getting much for it, keep driving it. Just don't throw a bunch into it. Next question. Eric says, "Scotty, good morning. What do you think of the 2003 Ford Focus standard transmission with 138,000 miles on it?" Okay, the Focus is a lower line car, but the main problems they have are their automatic transmissions. They even had a class action suit against them for some of them. That's a standard transmission. Much better made vehicle. I got customers with old Focuses with standard transmissions that have 250,000 miles, and they're still running strong. So that's not bad. You know, they could last a long time. But if you're talking about buying one and it's an '03 with 138,000 miles, don't pay that much for it, because their resale value isn't that high. You're not going to get any warranty, so, you know, you're gambling with your own money, but you're not paying that much for it if you get it for a little bit cheaper. And then you can see, hey, you get your money's worth out of it. Always pay less for an older car that's got higher mileage on it. Might be a good car because it's a standard, but don't overpay. Don't ever overpay. Next question is Shingo Karishna, 1997. "Scotty, I'm looking at an '09 automatic Matrix X with 48,000 original miles for $10,000. The car's very sound, but it needs recalls done. Is it a good purchase?" Okay, well, it's 10 years old and they want 10 grand. That's expensive, but the problem is, you know, they don't make the Matrices anymore, and I've got one. And it's an excellent vehicle. So you're going to be a hard time finding one that's only got 48,000 miles on it that's 10 years old. So the recall is just a bunch of nonsense. It's the airbag crap, and who cares about that? You can take it in if you want, and they have to put new airbags in for free. That's the law. But realize, here's the funny thing. They stopped making the Matrices, which I'm really laughing at now, because I thought, why did Toyota stop making the Matrices? People loved them. They were great cars. Well, it was just a decision that they said they wanted to drop the car from their line. It's basically a Toyota Corolla frame and engine and transmission anyways, right? So now I noticed this year, now they came out with the Corolla hatchback. It's a Matrix. Look at it. It looks almost exactly the same. They're just bringing it back and calling it a Corolla hatchback instead of calling it a Matrix, you know? I mean, it's kind of silly that they stopped making them, and now they're basically making the same vehicle, only they're calling it a Corolla hatchback. They're great cars. I don't know why they decided not to make them, but now they are making them and just call them Corolla hatchbacks. Next question. Ernie Barty says, "I got a 1.9 TDI engine. It burns a lot of oil, 1 liter every 500 kilometers. Can it be the turbo?" Yes, it can be the turbo. They get turbo blow-by. Realize that the turbo on that thing is also oil-cooled and oil-lubricated, just like the engine. It uses the same oil supply. And if the seals start to go, it will blow it through. And here's how you can tell. Just take the air line off, the ductwork that goes from the turbo into the engine where it sucks the air in. If that's all coated with oil inside, it's your turbo, because that should be totally dry. If it's got oil, your turbo's bad. Simple check. If it isn't, then it's your engine just burning oil. I bet it's a turbo, because a lot of them, as they age, they do that on Volkswagens. Their quality control isn't what it used to be, to say the least, which is a big reason I tell people not to buy Volkswagens anymore in the United States, at any rate. Next question is Abel Chavero. What's your opinion on a 2013 Dodge Dart with 100,000 miles? Well, if you're thinking about buying it, don't waste your money. That has nothing to do with the Dodge Dart of the 60s when I was a kid in the 70s. They were fun little cars. You could even put a V8 in them. Those are basically all Fiat parts in those things. And I rented one once when I was on vacation because, see, even if I don't see many cars, when I go on vacation, I'll rent all the ones so I can try them out and tell you guys what I think of the stuff. And I thought it was an absolute pile of crap. It had an automatic transmission, shifted horribly. It was noisy, didn't ride all that well. Now, it did get really good gas mileage. I'll give it that. But overall, I never rented another one because I thought, that wasn't any fun to drive. It was just, bleh. Yeah, I wouldn't buy one if I were you now. I mean, if you can get one really dirt cheap and you want good gas mileage, go ahead. I've known people that'll do that. But don't pay much for a vehicle like that because they fall apart as they get old. Next question. Damien Rinkmeister says, Scotty, I'm thinking about importing an '03 to '05 Mercury Grand Marquis to the Netherlands. It'll be my weekend car. I won't drive it much. What's your opinion? Reliability and the air suspension. Okay, well, air suspension systems are just a pain in the butt. But they ride really nice, and you can always fix them on those. It's still a Ford product. Now, realize that here in the United States, the brand Grand Marquis are known as grandma and grandpa cars. So if you're a grandpa or grandma and you want to go with the flow, go right out and get one. I mean, what the heck? And if it's a kind of a cool car, maybe in the Netherlands, people don't drive many of those, go right ahead. They can last quite some time. They're solid built cars. Most of them got that big old 5-liter V8 engine on them. They'll run a long time, and you say you won't drive it much. You won't care about gas mileage. I know I met people in England that had big old American 60s muscle cars, and they drove them on the weekend and the car shows and stuff. They didn't care about the gas mileage, so what the heck? Next question. Wolf says, Scotty, what are your thoughts on the 93 Skyline GTR? I'm thinking about getting one as a weekend car. Thanks. Well, those were fun cars to drive. That's old enough, a 93. That was before Renault and Nissan merged. That's when Nissan was still making really reliable cars. A lot of guys turn those things into drifter cars. They can really zip around. They're solid made. But here's the thing. A lot of guys use them as drifter cars and race around in them. You might buy one. It might be completely worn out and be a pile of junk, and you're going to put a fortune into it. So if you are going to buy that car, find a guy like me, a serious mechanic who knows his stuff, to go check that thing out to see what kind of shape it's in before you throw your money out. Because, for example, say it's a young kid who's selling it, don't buy it. They all rag the heck out of those things. So you don't want to do that. Next question. The Orange says, hey, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying the last generation Pontiac Grand Prix GTP. What's your thought on them? Don't buy one unless it's going to be a weekend toy like the previous guy who's only get a Grand Marquis and send it to the Netherlands and only drive it a little bit. One of the reasons Pontiac went extinct was because of those last generations. They had so many freaking problems. Now, the only one I would ever buy, if you can find the ones that had the V8 engines in it, like that the Corvettes use, the fancy ones are on, go right ahead, because that was rear-wheel drive, and those were okay. But I would never buy any of the front-wheel drive Pontiac vehicles. They were mainly all garbage. They just, I got to laugh because you remember, right before they went extinct, they used Matt Dillon to do all those voiceovers on their advertisements, and then they went out of business entirely. Maybe he's bad karma, I don't know. Next question. Lolo's 18 says, have you ever had sex with a Toyota? Lots of laughs. Okay. No, but I had sex in a Toyota. That was a long time ago, though. There's not all that much room in them, but our Matrix, the seats pop down on them, so you got a whole bunch of room in the back. It's almost like a little mini camper, so something like that. I mean, kind of a funny story. The other day, a guy was telling me he was thinking about living in his car. He wanted to write a book about it, and he's got a Camry. And Camrys are nice cars, but the seats only go back so far. There's not that much room for sleeping in them. He would have been better off getting like a Toyota Matrix or something where the seats go the whole way back forwards, and then you got all kinds of room, and you could actually kind of do a camper thing in them. Next question. Brian Bassett says, what are your thoughts on an '03 Mustang V6? Okay, Mustangs, I'm a fan of the V8 engines. The V8 engines are the ones that I really like. I like the V8 engines. I'm not really a fan of the V6s because they're kind of underpowered and they don't last as long as the V8s. But if you're not a racer and you just want to piddle around, I have quite a few customers that are older customers and they like the look of the Mustang, but they're not racers. They never go over the speed limit. If the speed limit's 75, they go 75. And a V6 engine is perfectly fine for that, you know? Plus, if you're going to buy a used one, the V6 ones are much lower prices than the V8s. And also, since it's the V6, the guys aren't generally as much racy. The V8s, most guys race them around. The V6s, the people that buy them generally don't race as much, so you can get a car that probably isn't worn out. Next question. Kevin Clark says, on a leased car, should I change the oil myself or have the dealership do it? Heck, change it yourself. Oil's oil. As long as you change the oil, you don't pay a bunch of money at some dealership that has something done, and you're leasing it. It's not even your car. So, what do you care? And it's law. I know it's law, and it's law because of the Magnuson Moss Warranty Act. Is as long as you keep the receipts of where you buy the oil and filter from and change it, you're proving that the oil's been changed. I know when you take the lease and you got to prove that you've maintained the car, they can charge money for it. But as long as you keep the receipts, it's legal. Because I had a customer, they tried to screw him over and say, oh, you didn't maintain your car. And he said, no, here's all the receipts of the oil, and I changed. And I said, as an additional thing, if I were you, take a picture every time you're changing the oil, just to say, well, here's a picture of me changing the oil, and here's the receipt. Then they can't get you, and you save money that way. Next question. John Schupel says, Scotty, what do you think of the 2001 Nissan Altima? Not much. I've had customers with them, and they had engine head gasket problems. Their automatic transmissions are garbage. They went all the time. I would never advise somebody to buy one of those. Now, if you buy a brand new one, it might work okay for, the first 80, 90,000 miles. And if you're happy with that, you can go ahead. But they're not going to run like a Toyota or a Honda and go 2, 3, 400,000 miles. They'll bankrupt you then because after I believe it was the year 2000 that Renault and Nissan merged, and then the Nissan quality just went down the toilet. Nissan's been on the verge of bankruptcy for a long time. They've had a lot of problems with productions and with sales. I mean, Ford almost bought them a long time ago, but then Ford stock went down when the market crashed, and they gave up with buying them too. Next question. Eric Caraballo says, Scotty, is the Scion FRS a good, sporty looking, reliable car? Looking to buy one at a good price. Yes, they're sporty, good looking cars. I got a customer that's got one that he bought it for that very same reason. He said, look, a lot of the stuff's almost the same as the small Lexus. The engine and everything is a 4-cylinder one. And he's loved the car. He got a standard transmission, and he likes how fast it is. He drives like a maniac. So he liked the acceleration of it. If it's an automatic, they're a little on the slow side, I got to say. But as a standard, they're a very quick little car, and if you change the oil regularly, they're very reliable cars, too. And you can't really call it a sports car, but you did say sporty, and they are sporty cars. is. Toyota never really was in the sports car market. That isn't their thing. Look at their new one. It's really a Subaru makes them, and then they call them the Toyota 8s or whatever they call them. I've driven them, and they're nice cars. They get around. They're sporty, but they're not sports cars. They're not all that quick. And for the money, a brand new one, I'd buy something else myself. Next question. Picho Gonzalez says, Scotty, why do four-cylinder Toyotas vibrate and idle? Okay, a lot of four-cylinder cars vibrate and idle. The ones that don't have actually anti-vibration parts inside the engine. Like you take a lot of the four-cylinder, especially the older Honda Accords, they were extremely smooth. But what they had was they had a timing belt that ran the cam to run the valves, but then inside that, they had another belt that went to an anti-vibration shaft that spun to get rid of the vibration of a four-cylinder engine. And man, they were really smooth. Now, it costs more money to make them that way, and you lose a little bit of horsepower in the engine for that. But engines that can be made that way. Now, Toyota, to my knowledge, I've never seen one, never made any that had anti-vibration systems in them, so they'll vibrate a little. It doesn't hurt anything, and you actually get better gas mileage if you don't put that in, because it takes energy to run the anti-vibration system. Most four-cylinder engines are going to vibrate a little because they're little and they only have 4 cylinders. The more cylinders you add, the smoother they are. That's why ages ago a lot of the big fancy ones went to V12. Of course, they're really smooth with V12. You got 6 cylinders on each side and they all balance each other out. Next question. Antoine Weaver says, Scotty, I got an '04 Buick Regal. Every 3,000 miles, I have to add a quart of oil. No spots in the driveway, and I replace the PC valve each time. What could it be? Hey, it's a 15-year-old Buick. It's just burning oil. Either the valve seals are a little rotten and worn, and they're sucking oil into the engine, or the piston rings are worn. If you actually want to know what it is, do what's called a wet and dry compression test. You take all the spark plugs out. Then you do a compression test with a compression reader. Then you put like half a tablespoon of oil in each cylinder hole and retake the compression level. And if the pressure goes up quite a bit, it's the piston rings that are worn. But if the pressure stays the same, then it's the valve seals that are worn. And you can tell that the valves are worn. So you can test it that way. Either way, you got to rebuild the engine. So, it's not worth fixing on some old thing like that. Well, that's it for this week. Remember, every day of the week, I upload 2 videos on the Scotty Kilmer channel on YouTube. So subscribe. You'll never miss another one. And remember to ring that notification bell so you'll be notified and you won't miss any of them. And I'm here Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube, live answering your questions. And Thursdays at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But I won't be doing it next week because it's turkey time Thanksgiving. It'll be the week after.